there, and welcome to the Fearless Artist Podcast, where we empower classical musicians to build their own thriving careers. I'm your host, Michelle Lynn, and together with Deanna Petre, we teach artists to conquer the entrepreneurial side of their careers and create the futures they want. We are two freelance classical musicians who have lived and worked in Europe for a decade, and together we started the Fearless Artist Mastermind, a coaching company created to teach classical musicians how to overcome fear and take action on building their dream careers. In each episode, we will explore the intersection of artistry and entrepreneurship, teaching you the fearless mindset with practical steps and strategies to build a sustainable career. Get ready to build your own artistic brand, find a supportive community of musicians so that you don't have to figure out everything alone, and earn a living that you deserve. We believe that you can be a thriving artist and not a starving one, and we are redefining what it means to be a classical musician in the modern era. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today is a very special episode because today is episode 100 of the Fearless Artist Podcast. Can I get a round of applause? Yes. I know, you're all cheering. No, but today's a big deal, and we wanted to celebrate. So to do the 100th podcast episode, I can't believe I'm saying this, I have a solo episode for you guys where I want to just share some reflections on what it's been like to start this whole process and to continue it over a while. I mean, I want to say our first episode was January 2024. And yeah, back in the early days, we were doing one every 2 weeks. And then I was just testing things out to see what my kind of capacity was going to be able to do a podcast because I was adding it to a already packed schedule. But we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a bit. First of all, I want to say welcome. Welcome to everyone who's listening. If it's your first time listening, then I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for giving me your time and space. And so whether you're at the gym or you're shopping at the mall or you are walking the dog, I just really hope that you're going to be encouraged and inspired. And, you know, the whole reason that we started this podcast in the first place was to have a little bit of more space to talk about the realities of being a freelance classical musician, because my brand on Instagram is really to share a little bit more behind the scenes, being authentic. If you don't know my story, I was lost and stuck in perfectionism and comparison for a really long time. And only seeing the highlight reels of everyone else really kept me thinking small for my own self, because I just felt like I could never do that. I would never be able to get there. And so now that I was able to crawl out of my perfectionism, as I like to say, that I'm on the other side to a large degree, not fully there, but stick with me. I like to share a little bit more authentically on my Instagram. So I do try to put the behind the scenes. I try to talk openly about things that I'm reframing in my mind, whether that's negative thoughts, or I have a series right now called How Not to Spiral as a Classical Musician. Just different ways to say the open realities of, hey, like we're all out here, we're all putting ourselves out here, and it's tough to constantly have to try not to compare yourself from what you think success is, what you were taught success is, what you're still hoping your career will transform into, and just having a very small glimpse into someone else's career, their life, and then thinking that that's their reality. So anyway, all that to say that the podcast was also supposed to be a place where I could unpack ideas and share more vulnerably about my process, but also to invite incredible guests, which we have done. So the reason why it's such a big deal we made it to 100 episodes is because fewer than 5 to 7% of all podcasts make it to 100 episodes. So usually there's a massive drop off right at the start. The vast majority of shows are abandoned long before hitting 100. And roughly 44 to 90% of all created podcasts quit immediately after recording just a couple of episodes. So there you go. That's why this matters. 5% of people make it this far. I didn't do it alone. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you everything about how we got here, some things that I've learned, and we have the countdown, very special countdown. So we're going to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's going to be 5 things I learned, 4 ways we actually stayed consistent to get to 100 podcast episodes, because I should have looked up the statistics of this, but I think most podcasts who start do not make it to episode 100. So that's a really big achievement to celebrate. And I say we because I have a team, which I'll get to. 3 lessons I learned from my guests, 2 mistakes, and then 1 surprise at the end. Okay, we're not going to tell you what that is. And first, before we dive into the episode, I just want to let you guys know what is coming up at the Fearless Artist on September 8th. It's our annual marathon called the Fearless Career Day. This is a day full of guest speakers and workshops. It goes all day. It's truly a marathon. So whatever time zone you're in, there will be a call available at a time that suits you, I'm sure, and the rest is recorded. So we're starting at 6 a.m. Eastern time, noon European, Central European. And we've got a number of incredible speakers lined up, including Molly Gabrian, who is the author of Learn Faster, Perform Better. She talks about the neuroscience of practicing. It's extremely helpful. She was also on the podcast. We've got Ben Bliss, who is a tenor. He sings regularly at major opera houses, including the Met. He just came out with a book called Making It Work, How to Make Your Bank Balance Work as a Freelance Classical Musician. We have Jessica Phillips, who's coming from Juilliard. She teaches entrepreneurship there. We have our fabulous friend and colleague, Bernhard Karras, who is the creator of Be Your Own Manager. He was the former artistic director of the Concert House in Vienna. He runs a major consulting firm now in Vienna and globally. He's always speaking somewhere exciting. And Deanna and I did our coaching training with him through his Vienna coaching course, and we're co-leading this event together. So early bird tickets are still available. You need to run right now to the show notes or DM us on Instagram. Fearless Career Day. We'll get you all the details. Use code MyCareer, no space, MyCareer for 33% off right now. So go grab your ticket. As I said, the whole thing's recorded. You don't want to miss it. You can come on with your camera off if you want to be in your pajamas. But it's going to be a really important, excellent day to inspire you to start September off with a bang and to have some great skills and ideas to inspire you to set you up for success. So take advantage of that, and we'll see you there. So let's jump into the episode. All right, so kicking it off with 5 things that I've learned hosting this podcast for 100 episodes. The first thing that I learned that surprised me was how many people say yes to coming on the show. And they are excited. They are happy to. They are honored. And I think that was the biggest surprise for me, is that how much my network has expanded by being able to invite people onto the podcast, and people that I have no business DMing or having an hour of their precious time have agreed to come on and have a one-on-one conversation simply because I could offer them a space to share their ideas, share their work, promote whatever they were working on. And so I've had some really huge names, people that I was even nervous to send the first DM to, who have said like, yes, definitely, I'd love to be on there. So that was a big surprise, and very encouraging to know that behind the big names are real people who have great things to share. And yeah, it's been really wonderful to make some real connections and even friendships. Number 2, the thing that I learned was my solo episodes have consistently performed the best out of all of the episodes, which was a big surprise and shock to me, because one of the reasons I didn't want to start the podcast was I was worried about rambling. I was worried about speaking too much. I was worried about people getting, I don't know, not interested in what I had to say, or that I don't know what I was thinking. There was just this kind of, oh no, I don't want people to think this about me. And that was a irrational fear, I would say, that held me back for a long time from just starting. And in my whole life, the way that I've gone out of this is by focusing on being a contribution and focusing on serving and sharing. And I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I'm usually not. But if I can think of one thing that I can say to help the conversation move forward, or to encourage the other person, or to ask a good question, which leads me to number 3. Being a podcast host has made me learn how to speak more concisely, how to ask better questions, and then therefore learn how to be a better listener. One of the things that I disliked about other podcasts I would listen to is that it was more interview style, just kind of question after question after question, and that you wouldn't really get to go deeper and hear what was beneath the initial question. And so something that I really wanted to do with my podcast is have a space where I could go underneath that initial Q&A and hear what the person's actually thinking, and learn about their process, and learn about how they deal with difficult moments. And some people open up right away, and some people it takes some time, because you also have to try and establish trust when you're meeting someone for the first time. Many times on the podcast, I'm meeting people for the first time. I don't do a pre-call or anything to screen people or to have that initial chat. I usually just say, let's just jump on and do it. And that's a choice I've made. I know other podcast hosts do that differently. But just all that to say that by learning to listen and pull out things that I find could be interesting for not just me, but the audience, and then asking deeper questions, it's enabled us to go in really great directions and get some really specific tools. And if you guys know anything about this podcast, my heart has always been to have really practical things that people can actually apply. at the end, because the last thing we want is a lot of great info that nobody does anything with because they're all just these conceptual ideas and we all sit around and think, wow, that's a great idea. And then nothing happens, right? Like we're all about taking action at the Fearless Artist. You know this if you are in our Fast Forward membership, which is over 65 incredible musicians. You definitely know this if you're in our mastermind, because then you have one-on-one coaching with me and Deanna where you're accountable and very supported. I feel you're fully supported. So yeah, how to ask better questions, how to be a better listener and dig deeper. Number 4, what I learned hosting this podcast: if you make people feel seen and heard and appreciated, they will open up to you. And this is obviously connected to being a good listener. But I think my demeanor, I just try to make people feel comfortable, welcome them, give them the space to speak, and then just try to steer the conversation a little bit based on an outline, a rough outline that I've created for each episode. I do not script things. I'm really not like a pre-planner for how episodes go. I just kind of have an outline of where I'd like to land by the end. And yeah, when you do a little bit of research on someone and you can name a couple specific things that you pointed out in their content or their bio or like a recent post that they made, something that you liked about that, you see that people appreciate that you took some time and effort to actually look into what they're doing and to show that you care. So that was really great because it also makes me feel very genuine, like I actually do care about my guests. And so it's not fake. And then you can have a much deeper conversation with strangers, with people that you haven't met yet. Number 5, for what I learned, our podcast now has monthly downloads of around 1,000, which are not huge numbers, but the amount of people who have told me, hey, I'm listening to your podcast and I really like it, has really surprised me. I mean, people that I don't know at all, or people of importance that I had no idea they were listening. We just recently spoke at O Academy, and one of the planners for the event said, oh, I really appreciate what you're sharing. And whoa, I had no idea you were even listening, and we hadn't even met before. So that really says to me that people do watch and people do pay attention, and we just need to stay focused on what we're doing. So I can't get too wrapped up in numbers. I can't worry about, if it's 1,000 people or 10,000 people. Although I have to say, if I was speaking for a room of 1,000 people, that would be pretty awesome. So it's just about the quality and the relationships that we're building and the information that we're giving for free on this podcast, because we've had so many incredible guest speakers, experts, people from all over building portfolio careers, doing really interesting things, teaching entrepreneurial skills, applying them, writing books, having their own projects. And it's been a wealth of knowledge and information over the last 100 episodes, and very, very inspiring for me to get to hear people's stories. All right. Number 4 ways that we actually stayed consistent. As I mentioned before, not very many podcasts make it to episode 100. So here we are. How did we get here? Did Michelle do it? The answer is no, everybody. Michelle shows up and she talks. She listens, but she listens and talks. And my team, want to give a big shout out. So first of all, Pokey Huang, who is in New York. He's my podcast producer. He is also a good friend. He's amazing. And he had reached out to me and asked if he could produce this podcast because he's building up his portfolio and he has a dream of producing multiple podcasts. And he did an extensive amount of work in the past. So he said, hey, I'll produce your podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure and thrill working with him. And actually, he's the reason that I'm doing this right now. It's currently 10 p.m. I need to be practicing, but I'm here. I'm here recording because we got to hit episode 100, and I'm accountable. I'm accountable to my team, and I also want to thank them by showing up. So he handles all the production. He does graphics. We've got a template for that, and all I need to do is invite the guests, have a great conversation, and then send off that audio, and he does everything. He's got like magic skills and makes it all sound really, really great, and texts me to let me know when we don't have episodes coming up so that I can make sure I get a couple conversations. But yeah, without him, I mean, this wouldn't happen. So I rely heavily on accountability and team. I'm a very big team person. And if I was doing this project alone, it just simply would have fizzled out. So I think that's really important for anyone listening. If you want to start something, you have to put people in place to keep you accountable, or at least support you along the way, to check in with you so that you can continue. Because there will be roadblocks, there will be reasons why you want to give up, there will be excuses. And sometimes those excuses are valid. Like you might just be tired. But if there's a way to keep the consistency going, I think that's really important. So we like to talk about minimum viable product, MVP. And I would say that's what I've often done for this podcast. A couple times we've done replays when I've just been simply unavailable. And also the fact I mentioned earlier, I don't do a pre-show conversation. I don't do a ton of back and forth with the guest. I send a really chill DM. Now I'm getting into the second reason why I stayed consistent. And I'm like, hey, I appreciate this about you. I've got a podcast. Here's the link. If you're interested, I'd love to have you on. Something like that. Very, very chill. And people respond and they're excited. I've very rarely gotten a no. Usually it's a timing issue, like come back to me in a few months. Even one of my dream podcast guests who has a huge podcast of his own and he's been on my dream list, I just finally got the courage to send him the DM a month ago. And he said, hey, circle back to me in 6 months with my book being released, the third edition. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys early next year. But yeah, that's also how I've stayed consistent. Very minimal. There's no hubbabaloo. Hubbaloo. Is that a word? What am I trying to say? Hubbabaloo. Anyway, all of you know, you guys know what I'm saying. I've been on podcasts where there are like 5 emails back and forth and they need headshots and they need your bio and they need you to take the graphic and share it on your socials. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that would have increased our listeners because we would just simply reach more people if we did more heavy promo. We do invite the guests to share it on their socials, but we're just pretty chill over here. And I think that's the reason why we've been able to keep it going consistently. And I would prefer to have the consistency over the really intense preparation. That's my preference. So I think that's why also we made it this far. I want to jump back to the team quickly because I want to mention Puck, my assistant who does the scheduling, the emails, and the newsletters. So every Friday, we send out an email that says, hey, here's the new episode. Here's what's coming up. Go listen. That's all her. And then Constantina, our constant creator. She's constantly creating content is what I want to say. She is posting the talking clips from the episode. So that is all. I am totally hands off. Sometimes I'll tell them a specific moment that I'd like to be highlighted. But other than that, I just really trust them. I'll give some feedback about editing from time to time. But yeah, that's been really fun to watch that. I do the conversation and then I hand it off and it goes. And then I wake up on Friday mornings and there's a new episode released on Spotify. And I'm like, wow, this is so great. So just again, the power of teams. So grateful to, Puck and Constantina and Pokey for helping make this podcast happen. We're on 4 ways that I stayed consistent. So number 2, I already said, a super chill pitch DM. And this goes for everyone who's been wanting to pitch someone. Listen, you're putting too much pressure on the pitch. Stop being weird. Don't be weird about a pitch. Just casual. Pitching is making suggestions. Pitching is sharing ideas, okay? It doesn't have to be this huge formal email where you try and convince them. This is not like a legal court. This is you saying, here's who I am. Here's what I appreciate about you. Here's an idea I have. What do you think? And then you wait for their answer. And there's multiple ways to follow up. And this is all stuff that we teach you in our Fast Forward membership, which you should definitely be in. If you are not, it is the best investment that you can make because you're going to show up and do the work when you are in a membership. That's an aside. But anyway, take the pressure off your pitches and don't be weird. That's my advice for all of you listening. Number 3, the impact. I've heard from so many people how much it's helped them. And I said earlier, people that I don't even know tell me that they're listening. So we've had 2 new people join our mastermind. I think 2 or 3 come into the mastermind, which is our invite-only program, just because I mentioned on the podcast we had some spots open for that. Usually we cap it at 10. I had new coaching clients who found out that I was coaching just from me mentioning it on the podcast. And of course, people join our membership, Fast Forward, because they want to be part of a community. They want to be part of an inspiring, healthy environment where they can share what's actually going on in their careers in conversation with others and get great feedback and advice and the accountability for their goals. So yeah, knowing that it was making a difference has really kept me going. And then 4, the last way that I stayed consistent was my first episode was 9 minutes. It was 9 minutes and I was nervous and I was a little bit formal and I was stiff and it was a bit awkward. And I had my iPhone set up because we didn't have things figured out yet. Like we didn't know how we were going to do it. And that's the last thing is like you need to stop overthinking how it's going to work and you need to just try something and adjust afterwards, right? So many of you are just stuck because you don't know what the right way to do something is. Look, if you go back to episode number 1, you're going to hear it. You'll hear it in my voice. You'll hear it in my tone. You'll hear that I'm not comfortable necessarily. And when you did hear it back then, you wouldn't have thought those things because you didn't have the comparison. So you see the growth over time, back to my mountain analogy, right? We look back and we can see, oh, wow, there's been growth. That's awesome. But at the beginning, you don't see because it's just the first time you're stepping out. So 9 minutes. Now we do them a little bit longer. But the other thing is that I did not look at the numbers for the first 6 months. This is really important. And I think I got this idea from Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, or Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic. And it's basically when you have a brand new creative project, it's like a little plant. Okay, you've got a little plant and you planted the seeds and the first little sprouts are coming up. And what does your inner critic perfectionism monster do? But you come on and you smash on it because you're like, this isn't a big enough plant and I planted it yesterday and it should be a tree by now, right? This is what we do to our creative projects. We think, well, look at that other person who's been actually doing it for 6 months or 2 years or whatever. They're so ahead. Why am I not there? Well, sweethearts, because you started yesterday. Okay. So you need a little bit of water, you need a little bit of sun, and you need to chill and keep going. Okay. So for me, I told Pokey, do not tell me the numbers for the first 6 months because if I find out there are only 2 people listening and they all think that I'm talking too much, then that's going to crush my soul and I will not keep going. So he didn't tell me, luckily, because I think in the beginning there were only 50 downloads for the first few months. And, that would have been a little bit hard for me to hear. So we waited half a year and then we improved and we kept refining the process. And then now I'm so glad that we crushed the 1,000 monthly download goal that I had set for early this year. Okay, we are on number 3 of our countdown of the podcast, episode number 100. So 3 lessons I learned from my guests. Now, I've had incredible guests. I was just scrolling through previous episodes and I was remembering and just realizing how many great people have come on. So go back and listen if you haven't already. Even just listening on 2-point speed and jumping around from episode to episode, there's gold in there and we all need to be re-listening and applying what people are saying. But one of them, 3 lessons. First lesson, Dustin Boyle. I had followed Dustin on TikTok forever. He is a marketing specialist. He works with pop genre, country genre, and he is just so great. He's always telling artists how to post better content, how to build their fans, how to reach their fans directly, cutting out the middleman, talking about artist managers, if it's worth getting a manager or not. He used to be an artist manager. He shares his story. I just really like him. I always have. So he was one of the people that I was like, whoa, maybe I could get him on the podcast. And he was so nice. He came on right away. And what he shared about that I really loved is that he was talking about how to talk about the messaging of the song and get people to your platform, your listening platform. So the big gap is that we can go viral on Instagram, get the 10K views, but do you then get 10K listeners on your Spotify? That's the funnel that we have to try and figure out. So he's talking on that episode about how to not just write a great hook, which is extremely important, but also how to get the feeling, capture the feeling of the song. And I pushed back a bit because there are no lyrics for classical music. And he said, yeah, but when you listen to classical, how are you feeling? Like whether that's, you're studying or you're going to go, you have an emotional moment or there's that, what is the feeling? And I realized that he had a really great point. And so writing the caption, writing the hook on screen where it's talking about the feeling of the song and then it's telling people, it's giving them that taster and saying, hey, if you want more of this, go check it out on my Spotify. And as a classical musician, when you have a personal connection to your fans, that's what makes them want to go listen to your Beethoven instead of every other Beethoven out there, right? Because you're building that personal fan base. Again, this is all stuff that we teach in our mastermind and our membership, but just to give the idea of where this is coming from. Go check out that episode with Dustin Boyle. It was really great. Okay, the second lesson I learned from my guests is Jessica Phillips. Coincidentally, she is a speaker at our upcoming Fearless Career Day, September 8th. Teaches entrepreneurship at Juilliard, and she has a great curriculum for her students. I also taught entrepreneurship on faculty, so it was so interesting for me to hear her curriculum and how she planned that. And she uses 2 models. One was the logic model. So it's talking about graphics that help people understand if I do this, then this will happen. Just giving a little bit more structure and strategy to the things that we apply in our careers to be able to test strategies and see what works and then have data, because many creative people don't track. They don't have data. They don't have ways to see what actually works. They just make decisions intuitively or instinctively, which of course we need space for, but not when we're trying to do marketing and strategy and build our following and our audiences. And she also does something called form theater, where she would have her students improv different negotiation scenarios, which I thought was fascinating. And okay, you're the artist manager. Okay, you're the artist. You're going to go get a bigger fee. So since having her on the episode, we've done that a couple times in fast forward meetings. And I think it's just really helpful to teach the students already. These are the real conversations you're going to be having in your career. Like, how are you going to advocate for yourself, but not press too many buttons? So that was really, really cool. The last lesson that I learned for this countdown, Aubrey Bergauer, and she has her book, Run It Like a Business. And again, she goes to orchestras primarily, but now I think larger arts organizations, and she teaches them, again, this concept of tracking your data, tracking your stats, knowing your audiences, knowing how to segment your audiences, market to them differently, and to bring them not just through the door, but come back. And one stat she shared is that 90% of new classical music audiences never come back, which was horrifying to hear. Like, imagine 9 out of 10 people who come for the first time to a classical music concert don't come back to that series. And when I asked her why, she was talking about this thing called the mild shaming effect. And so she's got multiple case studies that she outlines in her book and her podcast. You got to go check her out. But specifically, Duolingo did a test where if they used certain words, any of you who have Duolingo, if it said something where it's like, oh, you spent 15 minutes on social media today, imagine what you could have done if you had spent that learning a language, right? So that just that little bit of shaming tone totally turned people off from the app. So they switched it out because they test their stuff. And so she, with her organization, did tests around classical music audiences. And they said when they have this feeling of shame, like they clap at the wrong moment and they get the side eye, or they wear something that's maybe not formal enough and they walk in and no one welcomes them, or nobody makes them feel that they belong. Those little mild shaming cues are reasons why people don't return. I thought that was fascinating. So I've tried to start applying this with my own series, Opus 16. And I welcome people when they come in. I try to get to the door before they exit. We try to send a lot of Instagram messages to welcome people before and after, thank them for coming, being really sincere with people. Of course, it's not ideal if you're performing. You don't want to be standing around chatting before, but just I've tried a couple different things to let people know, like, hey, we really appreciate that you're here, and it's thanks to you being here that we can continue. So, please enjoy the show, and also please book your ticket for the next concert because we need to build an audience. So anyway, all of these concepts have helped me with my personal brand and also other projects that I'm helping to run. So there you go. 3 lessons I learned from my guests. Okay. We are doing our countdown of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for episode 100 of the Fearless Artist podcast. Okay, 2 mistakes that I've made running this podcast, hosting this podcast. 1, which you could argue I'm making right now, but here I am. It's the timing of conversations. So I have learned a lot about energy management in the last couple of years. And when this is a book that we talk about extensively in the membership calls. It's called At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof, Nieuwhof. And he talks about your red, yellow, and green zones. And so basically, when you have your highest energy, your green zone, you want to protect that like your life depends on it. And you don't put anything in there that's not your most important tasks. So if you're a musician, your green zone should be practicing or performing, right? Your yellow zone can be stuff like admin, emails, whatever, where you need to be coherent, have some energy. For me, this is important. It's when I'm on camera. So I will never, and here's the mistake I made, I would put a podcast episode in my green zone. And it takes a lot of energy to have a conversation with a stranger. So then by the end of the conversation, my green zone would be empty and I would have nothing left to go practice. So now I've learned I only book podcast episodes when I'm in that yellow zone. So afternoon, I don't go on camera in the morning. And then too late at night is the other mistake that I've made, which I'm doing right now, but I'm doing it because I have an accountability. And to wrap up the stoplight, it's the red zone is when you don't have a lot of energy left, but you can still do tasks. So maybe you just do something mindless, or you're cleaning your house, or folding laundry, or maybe even responding to DMs or messages or comments on Instagram, or scrolling or whatever. So it's still productive work, but it's when you're at, low battery kind of work. And so the biggest mistake people make is putting their most important work in when they're in the red zone. So anyway, when I started structuring my day around podcast interviews can only happen at certain times, at certain moments when I have a certain amount of energy, not too full because I need that for practicing, that really helped. So yeah, there you go. That was a mistake I made. And then the second mistake I made, which I was also making today. Guys, have I learned anything in 100 episodes? I don't know, because here I am still making these mistakes. I've been overthinking every single solo episode that I've ever recorded. I don't know why. As soon as I sat down, I did organize this one pretty well. My notes are full of ideas that I wanted to share with you guys. I don't do a script, but I have bullet points. And I don't know, I worry. I want to make sure that I'm concise. I want to make sure that the episode has a thread. I don't want to forget anything. I want to make sure that it's interesting. I don't know. I'm going to improve my vocabulary so I can impress you all. No, I have no idea. I overthink and I worry. And then in the end, the episode I did about ebbing and flowing, I get feedback about that one all the time. The episode I did about how not to burn out as a classical musician, also so many people saying, hey, that was so helpful. So I just got to shut up and know that there's good things, lessons that I've learned that, again, coming back to that idea of being a contribution. If I share something valuable, that's going to be well received. And maybe it's not for everyone, but that's okay. I can let go of that. So here is the number one thing for the countdown today, and that is my heartfelt encouragement for you, the listener. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're sitting on, whatever idea that you have that you haven't stepped out on, take the things that I've shared in this episode and apply them. By no means have I figured it all out, but just the ideas of starting small. 9-minute episode was my first episode. Letting go of what people they might not like, because you don't know until you start sharing. Having too big of an idea in your head, maybe you're at level 5 in your mind and you don't know how to actually start with level 1. Again, comparing yourself to someone who else is farther in the process. Through our coaching programs, we've seen so many people be able to step out and make projects happen. Like, how do I get the album out? Well, you start with one song. That's the truth of it. Or like, oh, I want to start a podcast, and we talk about these ideas and we don't actually make them concrete because we don't know where to start. And that's where you really have to learn how to get clear with yourself and get some planning done, get the first thing. Like, what is the first thing? And you will have resistance to that because it feels so small. But again, unless you actually sit down and hit record, you're not going to be able to see what's working, what's not, what you're good at, where are your strengths, what should you continue to do, and what things will you change in the future. And, we've made small micro adjustments over time. I've got my lighting set up now. I've got, actually, we're still even using the same equipment that we were doing in the very beginning. Things have just improved slowly. So that 1% better rule every time has really helped me too. Like, how can I make it just a little bit better? How can I make it a little bit smoother, and not thinking so much about what's wrong, but just continual progress. And then over time, according to James Clear, you will get 37 times better in 1 year if you get 1% better every day. So there you go. I hope this podcast is 37 times better than it was when we first started. So yeah, whatever you're sitting on, stop worrying about it and try it. And there's a thing going on Instagram right now, like the price of success is being cringy. Like, your first content is not going to be good, and that's okay. You don't have to show the whole world. The good news is that not many people see it, right? If it doesn't perform well, and then you can watch it back. And that's the thing. We know this from practicing. You record and you listen and you think and you hear it and you try again. So do that with the marketing and business side of your career as well. Like, write the newsletter, and maybe you don't get a lot of opens, but then next time you'll try a different subject line. Track things, write down what you've done, document your process so that you can look back and say, okay, I tried this time, and now I'm going to try something else next time and see which one performs better. This is what you can do on trial reels for Instagram, for example. You can put out a piece of content, the same video with 3 different hooks. You see which one does better, and then that's when you post on your main feed, right? Like, there are so many ways to kind of take the pressure off and give yourself a fighting chance to get kind of a toe in the ring without having all of this, like, it has to be perfect, because somehow we think that everything that we do has to be like our stage life, which mine is definitely not perfect, even my stage life. So who knows, guys? I don't know. We're letting go of perfectionism on all elements. I think I have shared enough for this episode. I hope that you have gleaned a tidbit. I would love to hear your takeaway. Send me a DM at the Fearless Artist Mastermind. Tell me what your takeaway is from podcast episode 100. I have good news. We are giving away 3 tickets 3 free tickets to the Fearless Artist Career Day. So if you are still listening, all you have to do is screenshot this, share it to your stories with your takeaway from this episode, and I'm going to pick 3 winners for the Fearless Artist Career Day, and we're going to announce the winners within a week of this episode coming out. So you've got a week to do it. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening. If you have been listening since the beginning, you have my sincere appreciation and thanks. And please do give me feedback, what you like, what I could improve. I'm totally open. I really appreciate it because it helps me get better. And ultimately, we want to continue to be a resource for you guys to be inspired and to stay on track and to know that, it's not easy what we're doing being freelance classical musicians, but it's worth it. There are beautiful, beautiful moments that make it all worth it. I mean, that's what we need to keep our eyes on, keep our eyes fixed on what's the path in front of us, not get distracted, stay on course. So thank you for being here. We'll see you on the next episode. And as always, be fearless. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Fearless Artist Podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to share this podcast with a friend. To join our membership or one of our coaching programs, visit our website at thefearlessartistmastermind.com.
This episode was produced by Pokey Huang at PH Media Studios in New York City. We're Deanna and Michelle, encouraging you to create your own opportunities and to go after what you want. You have what it takes to build the career of your dreams. Until next time, be fearless.